In the gray shadows of the towering city, where the skyscrapers pierced the clouds like needles, and the streets were more often lit by neon signs than by the sun, there lived a girl named Ilara. Her world was one of cold concrete corners, and the relentless hum of urban life far removed from the warmth of a loving home. Ilara was an orphan, her memories of her parents reduced to fleeting images, a soft smile, a gentle touch, washed away by the harsh reality of her daily survival. Ilara's days were spent navigating the treacherous maze of the city's underbelly. At 12 years old, she had learned to make herself invisible, a ghost among the bustling crowds, for visibility often brought trouble. Her nights were no respite, curled up in whatever makeshift shelter she could find, always with one eye open, always listening for the approach of danger. It was during one particularly bitter winter that Ilara found herself on the precipice of despair. Food was scarce, and the biting cold seeped into her bones, unrelenting and cruel. The city, indifferent to her suffering, continued its rhythmic pulse, heartless and unceasing. One evening, as a fierce snowstorm descended upon the city, Ilara stumbled through the blinding white swirls, each step heavier than the last. Her threadbare coat was no match for the freezing winds, and her body began to betray her, shaking uncontrollably from the cold. It was then that she collapsed in a narrow alley, her strength finally failing her, her breaths shallow whispers against the snow. As the storm raged around her, Ilara felt a strange sense of peace. Perhaps this was the end. Perhaps she would no longer have to endure the cold, the hunger, the loneliness. As she closed her eyes, accepting her fate, a faint light broke through the haze of the snow. The light grew stronger, and with it came a figure, a woman, wrapped in a thick, warm coat. The woman noticed Ilara almost immediately and rushed to her side, her expression one of deep concern. She scooped Ilara up with surprising gentleness and wrapped her in a blanket she had been carrying. "My child, hold on," the woman whispered, her voice a soothing balm. "You're not alone anymore." Ilara, too weak to speak, could only nod faintly as the woman carried her away from the alley, away from the storm, towards a flickering light in the distance. It was a small, cozy cafe, still open despite the weather, a beacon of warmth in the icy darkness. Inside, the cafe was a world apart from the cruel city outside. It was filled with the rich aroma of coffee and the gentle murmur of the few patrons who had braved the storm. The woman settled Ilara into a booth and ordered a hot chocolate, urging her to drink. As the warmth of the drink seeped into Ilara's body, slowly reviving her, the woman introduced herself as Mara. She was a nurse at a nearby hospital, she explained, and had a habit of walking home through different routes to see if anyone needed help. Tonight her path had led her to Ilara. "Why are you helping me?" Ilara managed to ask, her voice hoarse. Mara smiled, a kind, warm smile that seemed to light the room. "Because once I too was lost," she said, "and someone saved me. Now it's my turn to pass on the kindness." The storm outside eventually waned, but the storm within Ilara, fueled by years of neglect and hardship, began to calm as well. For the first time in a long time, she felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one where she wasn't alone, one where she could feel human again. As Ilara's eyelids grew heavy, succumbing to the warmth and exhaustion, Mara whispered, "Rest now. Tomorrow is a new day." And for the first time in what felt like forever, Ilara believed it. The morning after the storm found Ilara waking to the soft hum of an unfamiliar room. Light streamed through a small window, diffusing a gentle warmth that felt alien yet comforting. She was no longer in the cafe, but in a modest apartment filled with an eclectic mix of technology and homey touches. Tubes and wires merged seamlessly with potted plants and colorful throw pillows, a testament to a life uniquely tethered between the clinical and the personal. Mara was bustling in a small kitchenette, her movements efficient as she prepared breakfast. The aroma of synthetic coffee, perfected by food engineers to mimic the old earth variety, filled the space, along with the sizzling sound of plant-based proteins cooking on a stove. "Good morning, Ilara," Mara called out without turning. "How are you feeling?" "Better, thanks," Ilara replied, her voice still a rasp but stronger than the night before. Mara set a plate in front of Elara, filled with hot food and a steaming mug. "Eat up. You need to build your strength." As Elara ate, Mara explained more about herself. She wasn't just any nurse. She specialized in cybernetic implants, working at the frontier of human and machine integration. Her home doubled as her workshop, where she tinkered with devices meant to enhance human capabilities and heal imperfections. The city outside might have been cold and unfeeling, but Mara's home was a sanctuary. It was also a hub of secrets. Beneath the surface of her nurturing demeanor, Mara was a rebel of sorts. She harbored a deep distrust for the corporations that controlled the city, believing that technology should serve humanity, not enslave it. Mara's next revelation came as a shock. "Elara, I know you've struggled, but I believe you have potential beyond what you've imagined. With your consent, I can help you unlock abilities you didn't know you had." Curious and intrigued, Elara agreed, and Mara led her to a room that looked more like a lab than part of a home. Amidst the gleaming instruments and holographic displays, Mara introduced Elara to the concept of neural enhancement, a procedure that could expand her cognitive and physical capacities dramatically. The procedure was painless, administered through a series of injections and nano-infusions. As the enhancements integrated with her biological systems, Elara felt a rush of sensations, her mind expanding, her senses sharpening. "You are now connected," Mara announced as she monitored the readouts. "These enhancements will allow you to process information at incredible speeds, and your physical abilities will be significantly improved." As Elara adjusted to her new capabilities, Mara proposed a plan. She wanted to use Elara's newfound abilities to help others who were suffering in the city, to start a quiet revolution against the oppressive powers. Elara, once a mere survivor, now found herself as the potential catalyst for change. Energized by her transformation and driven by a newfound purpose, Elara spent the next few days learning to control her enhanced faculties. Mara trained her not just in using her abilities, but in understanding the ethical implications of her new powers. Their partnership, born of serendipity and fused by shared ideals, soon prepared to step out into the wider world. The city that had once seemed like a prison now appeared as a playground of possibilities. With each other's support, Mara and Elara were ready to challenge the very foundations of their society, armed with compassion, advanced technology, and a daring plan to bring about change from the shadows. Under the veil of night, the city transformed into a stage where shadows danced between the beams of neon lights. Elara and Mara, cloaked in the anonymity provided by the darkness, moved through the streets with a purpose. Their mission was clear: to infiltrate one of the corporate data centers that sprawled like fortresses across the urban landscape. These data centers were the brains of the operation, controlling information flow and surveillance throughout the city. Equipped with a stealth module, Elara was nearly invisible to the naked eye, a ghost slipping past security systems with an ease that belied her previous life. Mara, while not as physically enhanced, was armed with a hacking device capable of bypassing digital locks and security protocols. Together, they made a formidable team. Their target that night was a facility known as the Nexus. Guarded by drones and patrolled by cyborg security officers, the Nexus was a nexus of data critical to the corporation's control over the city. Accessing it would provide them with not only invaluable data, but also the means to disrupt the oppressive surveillance system. As they approached the perimeter, Elara's enhanced senses detected the patterns in the patrol routes and the frequency of the drone scans. Timing their movements with precision, they evaded detection, reaching the outer wall of the Nexus. Mara attached her device to a security panel, her fingers flying over the holographic interface as she navigated layers of cybersecurity. "Got it," Mara whispered, a small triumphant smile playing on her lips as the door slid open with a silent hiss. Inside, the data center was a labyrinth of servers and pulsating lights. The air was cold, filled with the hum of machinery and the sterile scent of ozone. They moved towards the core, where the mainframe housed the data they needed. Elara, connected to the system via a neural interface, began the data extraction. Her mind merged with the digital landscape, her consciousness expanding into the network. She navigated through data streams and virtual defenses, her presence masked by advanced cloaking algorithms Mara had developed. Meanwhile, Mara kept watch, her device ready to jam any incoming signals should they be detected. The tension was palpable, a tangible force that filled the space with electric anticipation. Suddenly, a warning flashed on Mara's device. "We've got company," she muttered. Security protocols within the Nexus had triggered an anomaly detection, and they were now on borrowed time. "Almost there," Elara responded, her voice steady despite the pressure. Her mind raced through the digital corridors, seizing the encrypted files they needed. With a final push, she pulled back, disconnecting from the system as she secured the data. "Let's move," Mara urged, and they retraced their steps, escaping just as the security forces converged on the mainframe room. They slipped back into the night, the data a whisper of hope stored securely in their device. Back in Mara's apartment, as they analyzed the stolen files, they uncovered more than they had bargained for. Plans for city-wide tech enhancements meant to increase corporate control were detailed within the documents, along with evidence of illegal experiments conducted on the city's most vulnerable. With this information, Mara and Elara knew they had the power to ignite a resistance, to rally those hidden in the city's shadows. The stolen data was not just information, it was ammunition, a call to arms for those who had long suffered under the rule of faceless corporations. As dawn crept over the horizon, painting the sky with strokes of pink and orange, the city awoke to a new reality. Flyers inspired by the stolen data and encrypted with calls to action appeared across digital screens citywide, their origins untraceable, their message clear. The time for change had come, and the rebellion had a face. Elara and Mara, the city buzzed with unrest, stirred by the sudden appearance of the encrypted flyers. Messages of dissent spread like wildfire, igniting conversations in the dimly lit corners of cafes, in the bustling marketplaces, and even within the sterile corridors of corporate buildings. The content, revolutionary and inciting, was a blend of truths and tactical rhetoric designed by Mara and Elara to awaken the populace from their enforced docility. In the heart of this burgeoning storm, Elara adapted to her role as not just a catalyst, but as a beacon for the disenchanted and oppressed. Her enhancements allowed her to slip in and out of the most heavily fortified areas, spreading further dissent and gathering support. Each night she returned to Mara's sanctuary, where they planned their next moves. Mara, meanwhile, was engrossed in refining their technological arsenal. In her lab, amidst a clutter of wires and holographic displays, she crafted devices that could hijack drone frequencies and turn the city's surveillance apparatus against itself. Every tool she created was another step towards dismantling the oppressive systems that governed their lives. Their next move was daring, a live broadcast over the city's communication network, a network they were never meant to access. The plan was to use the main communications tower, centrally located and heavily guarded, as their transmitter. It would require precision, and an even greater level of stealth than before. The evening they chose was overcast, the clouds hanging low like a shroud over the city's neon lights. Elara, cloaked in a fabric that rendered her nearly invisible to electronic detection, approached the tower. Her heart pounded in her chest, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of challenge and change. Mara coordinated from her lab, her voice a steady presence in Elara's earpiece. "You're clear on the east side. Security just did their rounds." Climbing the tower was a physical challenge, but Elara's enhanced muscles responded beautifully, propelling her upwards with grace and speed. At the top, she installed a small, unassuming device, a digital seed that would soon sprout across every screen in the city. Back at the base, Mara initiated the broadcast. Elara's image flickered to life across countless displays, her words echoing through every district. "We are the voice of the forgotten, the strength of the weary. We do not stand alone, and tonight we reclaim our city." The response was instantaneous. People poured from their homes, gathering in the streets, their devices lighting up with messages of support and solidarity. The corporate police scrambled to contain the situation, but the sheer number of protesters overwhelmed their efforts. Amidst this chaos, Mara worked tirelessly, rerouting data and shielding their location from detection. She watched through her monitors as the city transformed, her heart swelling with pride and a twinge of fear for Alara's safety. The rally points they had suggested in their messages were filling up, the crowds diverse, a microcosm of the city's population, all united under the cause Alara and Mara had ignited. As the night progressed, the protests remained largely peaceful, but the air was ripe with the potential for conflict, each shout and chant a defiance against the status quo. As dawn approached, Alara made her way back, moving through the city she no longer just survived in but fought for. The streets were calmer now, the initial surge of rebellion settling into a steady burning flame. Reaching Mara's apartment, Alara collapsed into the comfort of a couch, exhaustion claiming her. Mara covered her with a blanket, watching over her as she slept, her mind racing with plans and possibilities. Their broadcast had not just been a call to action. It was the first declaration of war against the tyranny that had gripped their city for too long. As the first light of morning filtered through the blinds, casting lines across the room, the aftermath of the broadcast rippled through the city, awakening a fervent zeal across its many layers. Corporate leaders convened in high-security chambers, their faces marked by worry as they discussed the rebellion that threatened to dismantle their dominion. In contrast, the streets pulsed with a newfound energy, groups of citizens covertly distributing leaflets and hacking public terminals to spread the revolutionary message. Mara and Alara, now symbols of the resistance, worked from the shadows. Their identities were cloaked in secrecy, their actions becoming more audacious with each passing day. They knew the corporations would retaliate, and preparation was key. In the quiet of Mara's lab, the pair devised a network of safe houses and a system of encrypted communication for their growing number of allies. Mara's expertise in cybernetics had become invaluable, not only in enhancing Alara's abilities, but also in safeguarding their operations from corporate espionage. During one of their strategy sessions, Alara proposed a bold plan to infiltrate SciTech, a corporation notorious for its ruthless data mining and surveillance technologies. "If we can get inside and upload a virus to their system, we can give the city back to its people," she explained, her eyes alight with the fire of resolve. Mara, initially hesitant, knew the risks were immense. SciTech was a fortress equipped with the latest in security tech. However, the potential to cripple the corporation's control was too great to ignore. She set to work on crafting a specialized virus, one that would silently spread through SciTech's networks, erasing traces of their intrusion and leaving chaos in its wake. The infiltration required precise timing and even more precise execution. Alara, equipped with a prototype stealth suit that Mara had enhanced, moved through the shadows of SciTech's sprawling complex. Her movements were a whisper, her presence just another ghost in the vast halls of corporate power. Inside, Alara's neural enhancements interfaced with the building's digital infrastructure. Guided by Mara's voice in her ear, she navigated through corridors lined with pulsating cables and blinking servers, a labyrinth designed to bewilder and deter. Reaching the central server room, Alara's hands moved with practiced ease as she connected the device containing the virus to the network. The upload was a silent countdown, each second stretching long as she monitored the progress. Just as the upload completed, an alarm blared. Security had been alerted to an anomaly in their system. Alara's escape was a desperate race against the rapidly sealing security doors and the approaching guards. Using her enhanced agility, she dodged surveillance cameras and neutralized threats with non-lethal precision, her path a calculated sprint towards freedom. Reaching the perimeter as security drones swarmed overhead, Alara used a scrambler Mara had provided to disrupt their sensors. She vanished into the night, her heart pounding not just from exertion, but from triumph. Back at the safe house, as they assessed the success of their mission through the chaos now evident in SciTech's compromised systems, Mara and Alara realized the scale of impact their actions had. Networks faltered, data corrupted. SciTech's grip on the city was loosening. However, with this victory came heightened risk. Corporate mercenaries, skilled and ruthless, were now actively hunting for the sources of the rebellion. The stakes were higher, the game more perilous. In the safety of their hideout, Mara and Alara planned their next moves. Each strategy, each plan they formulated was not just about survival or disruption. It was about reclaiming the humanity that the city had been stripped of. With every action, they wove a tighter web of resistance, their resolve solidifying into an unbreakable force, ready to face whatever challenges came next. As the city awoke to the systemic disruptions caused by the virus at SciTech, the corporate oligarchs were forced into a state of frantic defense. Their once impregnable fortresses of data and surveillance now showed cracks, and through these cracks, the spirit of rebellion surged like a flood. In their secure hideout, Mara and Alara monitored the unfolding chaos with a mix of apprehension and hope. Their latest operation had sparked widespread outages in surveillance and data processing, leveling the playing field for the first time in decades. This shift had emboldened more citizens to join the cause, swelling the ranks of the resistance with a diverse cadre of fighters, hackers, and ordinary people who had had enough of corporate tyranny. "Today we take the city back," Mara declared, her voice resolute over the hum of screens and keyboards in their makeshift command center. They had planned for this. Operation Dawn, a citywide strike to reclaim the major control hubs from corporate control. Alara geared up, her suit enhanced with the latest in stealth and combat technology. She was no longer just a symbol of the resistance. She was its spearhead. Beside her, Mara loaded software patches and encryption keys onto portable drives, tools that would help their teams infiltrate and secure the network nodes. The operation was a synchronized assault on multiple fronts. Teams of resistance fighters, led by Alara and coordinated by Mara via encrypted channels, moved out under the cover of darkness. Their targets were the remaining data centers and security headquarters, the nerve centers of the corporate infrastructure. As Alara led her team through the shadowed streets towards the main security headquarters, drones buzzed overhead, searching for anomalies. But Mara's tech rendered them invisible, mere ghosts flitting through the oppressive architecture of corporate power. Reaching their target, Alara dispatched her team to secure the perimeter, while she and a select few infiltrated the building. Inside, they encountered minimal resistance. The chaos sown at SciTech had left the corporation's forces disorganized and slow to respond. Simultaneously, across the city, similar scenes unfolded as each node was taken over. Systems hacked and control wrested away from corporate hands. Screens citywide flickered to life, broadcasting images of the resistance's symbol, a phoenix rising from the ashes of oppression, signaling a new era. As the sun rose, casting a golden light over the city, the corporate overlords were forced to negotiate. Mara, representing the newly formed Citizens Council, broadcast their demands citywide: an end to surveillance overreach, the dismantling of oppressive tech, and the institution of a governance system by the people, for the people. Negotiations were tense, the corporate moguls reluctant to relinquish their grip, but the power dynamics had shifted irreversibly. The people had tasted freedom, empowered by Mara's innovations and galvanized by Alara's courage. The corporations had no choice but to acquiesce. In the days that followed, the city transformed. Communities took charge of their districts, implementing systems of direct democracy and equitable resource distribution. Mara's lab became a public think tank, dedicated to developing technology for the good of the populace. Alara, meanwhile, helped establish a peacekeeping force to maintain order and protect the city's newfound autonomy. As they stood atop a building overlooking their transformed city, Mara turned to Alara, a smile spreading across her face. "We did it," she said, pride and relief resonating in her voice. Alara nodded, her eyes on the horizon. "We started something incredible here, but the real work begins now, keeping this freedom alive." The city pulsed below them, no longer a place of shadows and silence, but a vibrant testament to what can be achieved when